Welcome to the Rachel's English Podcast. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with my husband, David, and we've chosen some interesting questions to get us talking about ourselves and our lives. And as we go, we will identify phrasal verbs, idioms, or interesting vocabulary words that come up as we speak naturally. We'll pause the conversation and we'll discuss those words. We'll make sure they get defined and that you understand how to use them. If you'd like a free copy of the transcript for this podcast, please visit rachelsenglish.com/podcast and look for this episode. Let's get started. Okay, David, I'll start with a question and we'll both answer. So I would like you to describe an embarrassing moment or two that you've had as an adult.
Oh, nice. You have me go first on that. I see what you did there.
Yep, that's how I did it.
All right. So my recent embarrassing moment was a couple years ago when you and I were traveling on one of our road trips. And all of a sudden, I realized that I had scheduled a phone session with one of my clients here. And bang, out of nowhere, I just got this, this thought that I realized that I had totally missed that session. And it's not a good thing. I'm a therapist. And so therapists, you're not supposed to miss your sessions. So that was really embarrassing. He was very gracious. I called him and he really rolled with it. But man, that's not a good feeling to know that you've missed something and that the other person is really depending on you.
Right. So roll with it means something unexpected has happened, but you don't let it mess you up. Another example would be, during my presentation, my projector broke, but I rolled with it. I kept going without the visuals. So you called him like after the session was supposed to have happened?
I think so, or maybe he texted a sort of like, hey, where are you? I don't remember exactly what happened, who realized it first.
I remember that. Do you remember where we were?
On some kind of bridge thing at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco.
Yep. On
our way to get the, what are they called? Cable car.
Yeah. Well, I think actually we were taking a trolley at that time. It was like that bus-shaped thing. It was different than the cable cars, I think.
Oh, was it? No, yeah, you're right.
That ride we took that time.
Yep. All right, so that's mine. What's yours?
Well, I have a couple that I thought of. One of them was I was doing this YouTube program, and there were 36 different channels that had been invited to Los Angeles, to the YouTube space. We were getting a channel workup where we were getting all sorts of advice on how to make our channel better. And so of those 36 channels, there were maybe 5 or 6 where there were 2 people working on the channel, a male and a female. Most of them were just one person like me. But so there were some what looked like couples working on YouTube channels together, which is not uncommon. And I realized that not all of those male-female partnerships were couples. They were not all romantically involved. Some were married, and I knew at least one that it was just a business relationship. And so then I sort of felt like, I didn't want to assume that everybody was a couple just because it was a man and a woman working on the same channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked one of the sets of people what made them decide to start working together. I was clearly assuming they were not a couple. And then they very awkwardly, answered, I don't remember what. They didn't say, well, we're married, Rachel. But I could tell that it seemed weird that I had assumed that they weren't married. So then I was like, well, it's weird to assume that someone is married. So I felt like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place there. Like no assumption was going to be socially acceptable if it was wrong, if it was the wrong one.
And you didn't want to just ask.
Yeah. I mean, you don't just go up to someone in a professional environment and say, hey, are you guys married?
That's true.
I mean, that's awkward as anything.
That's true.
Now let's back up really quick. I said sort of a funny idiom. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Okay, so that means you're trying to make a decision between 2 things and neither of them really seem like a great option. I felt like I could assume they were married and try to interact with them on that way. I could assume that they weren't married and try to interact with them that way. But neither one of them felt like the right thing to do. I just found it very hard to figure out what to assume.
Right.
And
Right.
then you might think, well, why did you have to assume one or the other? Well, you don't, but when you're in this social / professional situation, because there was a lot of hanging out too for a whole week, I mean, it's just hard to not interact with somebody with that, knowing what that relationship is between other people in your group.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think it brings up, this thing that we talk about a lot where for people who are learning English and want to sound like a native speaker, there's the desire to sound natural and to use slang, which you've been talking about a lot, or to just be a little bit more informal. And it is really tough in those situations where it is one part professional, one part social. Another example of that is if you're out after work with coworkers, and let's say you're out for happy hour getting a drink, it's really difficult sometimes to know, well, wait a minute, is this, how should I be talking to this person? Maybe they're your supervisor or your supervisee, and it's tough.
I agree. When those lines get blurred, it can be hard, even as a native speaker among Americans, to know exactly how to be and what to say.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, people should not feel like it's just their accent or fluency that's making them feel awkward in those situations. That's true. I mean, it's those are tough for all of us.
Yeah. Okay, David, do you want to ask a question?
All right. So another question I want to ask you is, what's one thing you would like to change about yourself?
I guess I would try to change. I think sometimes I'm not very focused. I sit down at my desk to do something and, like 10 minutes later, I'm doing who knows what, but it's not what I sat down to do. And I can't even remember what I sat down to do. And I feel like some days I'm really focused and it's like, wow, I can feel it. I can tell it feels great, but that just doesn't happen that much. So I guess that's what I would say. I wish that my mind wasn't so open to distractions all the time.
But that really surprises me. You're someone who is, you have your own business. There's no one, making demands of you in terms of deadlines, and yet you always seem to be working really hard.
Well, but maybe sometimes I'm just up there watching YouTube videos.
Good to know.
Here's the thing though. I do that sometimes because I subscribe to this newsletter that's like online video news, YouTube news. It's called Tube Filter, I think. And, because I feel like I should know what's going on in the world of YouTube. It's never related to what I'm doing. But every once in a while, I'll get sucked down a hole. Like, that's how I found out. This is so stupid. I don't listen to the radio ever. I know no music. But that's how I found out that song Despacito was like topping the charts, was because it was talking about how the YouTube video was topping the charts.
Right.
And then I started listening to it.
Right.
Topping the charts means really popular. It's used a lot with music, movies, or video. And I think it comes from Billboard charts, which are used to keep track of the most popular songs in any given week.
Which, what story that makes me think of?
What?
When you and I were first dating and we're walking around Manhattan.
Oh, yeah.
And blaring out of this sort of like teen clothing shop was this music. And the song was wildly popular at the time. It was Call Me Maybe. And I turned to you and I said, so is this something along the lines of, is this just absolute trash or is this the epitome of pop music? And you said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard that song before.
Right.
I was stunned.
Well, for the record, when it came to the chorus, I did recognize the chorus, mostly because I'd seen like internet satires of the song.
Okay, again, an awkward way to know about the song.
Yeah. A couple idioms we used. David said along the lines of. We use this when we're not describing something exactly. Maybe we don't remember the exact details, but we're giving the general idea of it. And I said, for the record, which we use sometimes when we're correcting or clarifying something that someone has said. I'm just not much of a I just do not like pop music. I'll admit it.
That's one of your few character flaws, I would say.
And see, I would not call it a character flaw. What is a character flaw?
Character flaw, something that is just fundamentally a personality trait that is just really difficult to change and is
Is seen as negative.
seen as a negative. Mm-hmm.
So you were joking when you said that.
I was joking,
Mm-hmm.
mostly.
Now, would you ever tell someone that they had a character flaw, like, seriously? Because it's sort of a harsh thing to say to somebody, isn't it?
No, it's very harsh, and no, you would. That has to be in a very informal setting with someone that you know well.
And would it maybe be that you're talking about someone who's not there? Like,
maybe, but even
he
so,
has
that's
a lot of anxiety. It's it's a character flaw. Would you
yeah.
say that? I don't know. That's
You
kind of
could,
mean.
but that's pretty biting. That's not casual gossip. That's
Yeah.
a pretty biting accusation.
Mm-hmm. Do we use it jokingly more than we use it for real?
I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And often you would. It's safe to direct it at yourself.
Yes. Self-deprecating to be like, it's a character flaw. I love chocolate. Or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, David, what's one thing you would like to change about yourself?
Yeah, I was thinking about the question too. And there was a while, several years ago, where I was doing a sitting meditation practice every day or almost every day for 10 or 20 minutes. And it was great. I really felt like it helped me throughout the day, just be present to each moment, to not be spending a lot of time anticipating what was coming next or worrying about what had already taken place during the day. And I really liked that. My mind was just more calm and still. And then in the years since, when I haven't been doing that as much, I really noticed the difference. So I sort of always want to be meditating more and doing that practice, and I haven't. And so the thing that I would like to change is I want to get back to that. I want to get back to sitting more and having that feeling of just, your mind being calm.
So, the change that you can tell that has happened since you stopped doing that, how would you describe what your mind is doing now?
Well, I was thinking about it when you said hard to focus. It is related to that. And I think so it's hard to focus, but also what I noticed when I was doing more meditation was that thoughts that I had just sort of slid past. It was like I described it as my brain had Teflon. Like thoughts just weren't sticky and annoying.
Oh, what's Teflon? People out there might not know what Teflon is.
Teflon. I don't even know if that's still what they call it, but that's the lining of a non-stick pan.
Yeah.
So some pans have this coating on it that makes it so that food doesn't stick to the pan when you're cooking.
Is the theory that you can use less oil then when you cook with that kind of a pan?
Less oil and easy cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just supposed to wipe right out, and you don't have that like brown stuck to the pan.
Yeah. So like
phenomenon.
now that you don't have the Teflon brain, you have the brown food residue stuck to your brain from the thoughts.
Right. I have cheap cookware brain.
Yeah, that's the analogy. Okay, so Teflon. Non-stick surface, for those of you who don't know that word. Okay, David, well, what's one thing that you love about yourself?
Well, I went to sort of a character trait of mine, I guess. And thinking about in conversation, I tend to really pay a lot of attention to asking people good questions, making people feel comfortable in a situation or in a conversation. And I really enjoy getting people talking in depth about what's going on with them, what they're thinking about, what their worries are, what their hopes are, that kind of stuff. I think that, I'm just good at sort of drawing people out. What is that?
Yeah, so to draw someone out, that's a phrasal verb, to draw out.
And right. It's not an idiom or anything.
Well,
it's just
phrasal verbs are sort of idiomatic, I would say, but this would be categorized as a phrasal verb. And when you draw someone out, then that means you sort of bring them out of their shell. You get them to maybe be a little bit more vulnerable with you, maybe tell you things that they wouldn't just tell to just anybody. You're drawing them out. You're sort of getting them relaxed and talking more freely about themselves.
I wonder where that comes from, where that common usage came in. Because if I think about a turtle,
yeah,
when they're really safe and feeling at ease, then they come out from under their shell,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of a nice positive way to think about it.
Yeah.
But drawing out, we also would use in a hunting situation where like dogs would maybe, I guess they would say dogs are flushing birds out of a field.
Yeah. But I get what you're
They're,
saying.
they're drawing them out.
Mm-hmm. And we also use it, it's phrasal verbs are often used various different ways. And if we say that something is drawn out, that often means that it took too long to happen.
Oh, right.
Like if you're watching a movie and it's sort of this pace is slow and it's really long and it's unfolding really slowly. Someone might say, "Hey, did you like it?" And you could say, "Well, I did, but it just seemed kind of drawn out."
Interesting. You can see the connection there, but it's a pretty different meaning.
Yeah. I think when you draw someone out, that's seen as a positive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. When you're getting someone to open up, there's another phrasal verb that means the same thing when you're talking about people.
Right.
Okay, so one of the things you love about yourself is your ability to make people feel comfortable and drawing them out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what about you? What would you say?
Well, actually, today is a great example of this. I am pretty okay with mess. When I'm working on a project, I just kind of leave it out until I'm done, which might be never. And today, we had a cable guy over to our house changing out our internet, and he came up to my office, and there's piles of equipment everywhere. And I said, "You know what? I'm okay with this." And he was there observing it, and he was okay. He was really gracious working among my piles of stuff. But it just like looking at that and looking at my room, my office was just like, "Yep, I'm a messy person." And I'm not always. I definitely like things to have their place, but most of the time they're not in their place.
And so, okay, so the question was what you love about yourself. So
Yeah.
what about that is something that you love?
To me, it reflects like not a strictness to how things are supposed to be, and also like how do you value time? I valued time in a way that I do not think that spending time picking up my room is always the best way to spend my time. Like at the end of the day, if I had to choose between picking up my office and putting everything in its spot or coming down to hang out with you in Stony, I'm going to choose that. That's more important to me. I'm okay with the mess. I let the mess be and I let my life carry on around it so that because other things are more important to me. And also, I think another thing that I like about myself is sort of along those same lines, which is I'm not that interested in rule following. I use the phrase along those same lines. This means you're saying something that is related or similar to something you've already said. Along those same lines. Different from the earlier phrase along the lines of, which means I'm not saying exactly what happened or what the thing is, but I'm speaking generally about it. Okay, back to how I don't follow rules. I mean, I'm not like a horrible person, disobedient kid or anything, but I don't think that I have followed the normal path that a lot of people like me have followed with education and job and yada yada yada. Making my own way, choosing how I was going to do things. Actually, I just said yada yada yada, and it made me think about how we use that. That was sort of a Seinfeld thing for a while, wasn't it? Like it was part of a Seinfeld episode, and
Maybe, but it predates that
yeah,
for sure.
I think Seinfeld may have used it, and it may have had a little bit of a heyday under Seinfeld. Another thing I have to define. But when you say yada yada yada, it's like saying, you know what I mean. I could keep going, but I'm not going to.
Or you could say et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, right. It's like writing etc. period.
Mhm.
Yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I said it had a heyday under Seinfeld. When you have a heyday, that means sort of like a golden moment in popularity or in everything going right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this term, yada, 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 might have been in a Seinfeld episode, and it might have sort of taken off as something that people referenced a lot. And if I'm right on that, then it might have been a little heyday for that phrase where it was sort of more popular than normal.
So what's another example? I'm thinking of newspapers.
Yeah.
Newspapers in their heyday were extremely commonplace and were the number one media for daily news consumption
Right.
in their heyday.
Yeah. And now how many people get a paper newspaper delivered? Probably almost no one.
Right.
So that means their heyday is past.
Right.
They're not as popular as they used to be.
Right.
Yeah. Good example.
Thanks. So, you know what I was thinking about when you said about room for messiness in your office?
Mm-hmm.
Well, number one, thank you for coming downstairs instead of cleaning up. I love that.
You're welcome.
I would much rather have you have a messy office
Right?
and more time with me and Stoney.
Who needs a beautiful office up there when no one's in there anyway?
Right.
Like, go down, be with the family.
Yeah. But you know what I was thinking of was when your office for a long time doubled as our living room.
Yeah.
Then your comfort with messiness was a little bit of a situation.
Was it? You never said anything.
I maybe hinted at it.
Well, I mean,
I was being a good person.
It was
probably
pretty contained, though. It was just like piles on the desk. At least when my office was in the living room, I feel like I didn't have piles all over the floor in general.
Yeah, no, that's true. But it was.
But it bothered you?
Well, not really, because who cares? But because I think I have a decent messiness tolerance too.
Yeah, you're more neat, but you do tolerate me very well for how neat you are.
Yeah. You know what I just said? I said it was a little bit of a situation.
Oh yeah, what did you mean by that?
I meant that. Oh man, how do you even describe that? I meant that it was an issue. It was noticeable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you say we have a situation or this is a little bit of a situation, it means it's something that needs to be addressed. There's a little problem.
Right.
Yeah. Like if, let's say, when David cooks, he cleans up as he goes, and I don't. So when I cook at the end of at the end of whatever meal I've prepared, the kitchen is a little bit of a situation.
This is true.
It needs some help.
Great example.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about another question and tell us what is the best job you've ever had.
Okay. Well, I mean, I love Rachel's English. I'm going to say current job doesn't count. Also, it's not really a job. It's like the whole thing. I'm not working for somebody else. I'm going to say the best job I ever had was working at a guest house in Manhattan. It was in a great location. I got to live there. So I got to live in this amazing location in Manhattan. And it was a crazy job because I was the only employee. So I had to do everything. I had to greet the guests. I had to, set up the calendar, accept the payment. I had to do all the laundry, make up all the rooms. I was like maid service, laundry service, guest services. The worst part of it was the physical plant. That's the department that's taking care of buildings usually. I had to take care of the building, and it was over 150 years old. And it was an old brownstone close to the East Village. And oh man, I mean, that thing was crumbling. I remember a day where I had a handyman that I called regularly to help with things. And I called him on a Sunday and I said, what do I do? There are gallons of water coming in through this one wall. And he came over and he was like, I don't really know what I can do. But yeah. So it was an everything kind of job. And I think even though there are parts that I didn't like, that appealed to me. And then the other thing that appealed to me is I was the only person who worked there. So there was a board who I had to check in with. They were my boss collectively. But there was no one looking over my shoulder telling me what to do in a given day. I did what I thought needed to be done. And that's really how I operate. That's one of the things that I enjoy about my current situation too, being my own boss, is I love being in control of how I choose to spend every minute. And I'm always choosing to get things done. It's not like I'm going surfing at Rockaway Beach or something. But I like deciding when I do the laundry and when I
surfing at Rockaway Beach.
I've never surfed, for the record. I don't know. That came into my mind as like,
have you been to Rockaway Beach?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
totally
half possible.
Yeah, no, it's one of the beaches that you go to when you live in New York.
Okay.
And there's surfing there. And I was just, as I was speaking, and I was trying to think of what's an example of like totally shirking your duties. That's what came to mind. Shirk your duties. That means to not do what you're supposed to do.
What's a shirk? Is that like a shrugging off?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know that it's a physical thing, but when you shirk your duties, you don't take care of your duties. You do not do what you're supposed to do.
Right. I just wonder what that comes from.
I don't know what it comes from. I feel like there's a theme on this podcast of you asking me where English words come from, and I never know.
Because it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. It matters. It's
I mean,
interesting.
It matters,
yes.
But in order to sound more like a native speaker,
right.
It doesn't matter so much where it comes from.
Right. I think that you should start a blog where you follow up every podcast by researching all the words that you are curious about in your blog.
Oh, that sounds kind of fun, actually.
Okay.
I would enjoy that.
davidsenglish.com, everybody.
No. It can be on your. It's going to be on Rachel's English.
What about you, David? What's the best job you ever had?
Well, I'm a therapist, or you could say counselor. Those words are pretty much interchangeable. And I've been a counselor therapist for a long time, about 15 years. But about 10 years ago, I started a private practice. And that means basically, well, the phrase is putting out your shingle, which is used by a lot of different professions, I think.
I've never heard that phrase, actually.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
If you're putting out your shingle, that means starting up your own shop. You're hanging the sign above your door. So starting my own private practice meant that, similar to you, there's no one above me. I'm able to have my office and see my clients, and it's been really rewarding for that reason. But also, it's my best job ever because I really enjoy working with people who are motivated to work on their issues and work hard in counseling. So that's definitely the best job I've ever had.
You said that you've been a counselor therapist for 15 years and you've been doing that for 10 years. What were you doing for the 5 years before that?
I was doing counseling, but just not for myself. Those were
you were
jobs
working
where
for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a family therapist. 2 years going into individuals' homes and doing family counseling, and then for 2 years in what's called a residential treatment facility, doing therapy with kids and their families there.
Mm-hmm. But you prefer being your own boss. Also, are the people who are coming to you people who are choosing to go to therapy, whereas maybe in those first 5 years, was it people who had to go to therapy for a certain reason?
Yeah, I think that's a big difference. I mean, basically the whole 15 years, it's been both private practice and other things, but there's something unique about my practice in which people are motivated and eager. They're actively seeking out the hard work of therapy. And I think that there's something about that makes it really rewarding.
Yeah. So here the word practice is a noun. David's practice is his group of clients that come to him. Usually it's more common to see practice in its verb form, and this is something that we do to get better at something. You practice the piano, you practice your English. So I guess it could also be used with the clients. They're practicing talking to you about their feelings. They're practicing processing, maybe.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
In order to get better.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that I am a practitioner.
Mm-hmm. So that's another noun.
That's another noun.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. It's
related.
A riff on a practice noun.
Mm-hmm. Practitioner. Cool. I hadn't thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting right now. I'm working for my online school on stressed words and thinking about words in their different forms when they're a noun versus a verb, how they can be pronounced differently. For example, the noun house is different from the verb house, which ends in a Z sound. Where will they be housed? Or you live in a house where it ends in an S sound. And there's all sorts of different examples of that when the part of speech changes the pronunciation of the word.
Man, that's such a specific difference. I mean, I've talked about this before, but it's so different than Spanish, where I can read Spanish even when I don't know what I'm reading, because the rule, each letter that you see correlates to a sound.
Yeah,
right?
Because it's phonetic.
But I mean, yeah.
Well, and another thing that's confusing is often when a change happens in pronunciation, it's also stress. So, for example, you could say the word address. He addressed the public. He spoke to the public. But you might say, what's your address?
Mm-hmm.
And there it's a noun, and the stress is different. Address. address. So it's the sounds that are changed, but it's also the stress.
Impossible.
Impossible. Except not.
Unless you have a great teacher.
Well, a lot of people out there are working really hard and they're getting it.
It's true.
Okay, David, thank you for sitting down with me to discuss those questions and think about English.
Yeah, that was really fun. That brought up a whole bunch of different kinds of things. That's great. I like that.
Brought up phrasal verb to cause something to come to the surface to be discussed.
There you go.
Yeah, you really drew me out.
All right.
Okay. All right. Seriously, thank you for your time to come here and, lend your time to the Rachel's English audience. I appreciate it. And I know they appreciate it too.
You're welcome.
And again, if you need some help with the words, you couldn't understand everything, no problem at all. Visit rachelsenglish.com/podcast and you can find a free copy of the transcript for this episode. If you're not subscribed to this podcast, please be sure to do that at iTunes or Stitcher. And if you're inclined, please feel free to leave a review. I do read them all, and it's great for me to get feedback on what you like about this podcast.